Welcome into Buccaneers Insider Live, presented by Miller Lite. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. And man, we have so much to talk about with mandatory minicamp happening. We got some news going on before a pretty dead time of year. So we are in this blissful period before everybody leaves the building. They've been wrapping up mandatory minicamp today. We know you guys probably have tons of questions for us, so you can submit them on the Facebook page underneath our live video there. We'll get to those towards the end of the show. But first, of course, figured we'd just start with some of our initial takeaways from minicamp as a whole the last 3 days.
Well, first of all, it's over. The last practice was today, this morning, and they actually cut it short because the lightning alarm went off, and so they had to go inside the facility. And after a while, Todd Bowles decided, we're not going to do those drills on this turf because I don't want anybody getting hurt now, suffer an injury right now at the end of the offseason program and put your training camp in jeopardy. But a couple things that you can put together that were said during the week, Todd Bowles and some other people said not all of the players are in the shape they need to be in yet to start training camp. And when they get to training camp, they're going to be full speed ahead. There's no turning back. If you're not in shape and you're not ready to go, the team's moving on without you. So there clearly are some guys that have some work to do over the next 6 or 7 weeks. We think of this as their biggest time off of the whole season, and it is for players and coaches. But a lot of these players, they may take some time off, but I think a lot of them are still going to be working out quite a bit.
Yeah, it's when it's up to them that they're not doing the workouts at the Buccaneers facility. So this is when it's up to them what kind of shape they come in.
So you need discipline, obviously, and I think Todd Bowles really drove that message into them over the course of this week. So it'll be disappointing if any of them don't come through, right?
Right.
But there were some other things that I think we started to learn about Todd Bowles as a head coach. I think the practices are going to be very up-tempo. They generally finished in less time than was on the script. So if it was a 20-minute period, it would be 15 minutes because they're just moving along quickly. I think Tom Brady helps with that too. He was heard today saying, come on guys, we don't have that much time, let's go, right? I think you're also finding that Todd Bowles is not somebody that's going to be egregiously sharing injury information or strategy stuff if he doesn't have to. At this time of year, you don't have to do an injury report. You don't have to update everybody else in the league on exactly how far along all your guys are. And if you do set a time, everybody wants to set a time. Is Chris Godwin going to be ready for the start of camp, et cetera? If you set a time and then you miss it, it feels like a setback. So these guys are working to get back. Todd's going to tell you, basically, this is what we know. They're working on it. That's it. He's not going to give you a lot of specifics.
Right.
Which is probably the right thing to do, right?
For sure. And there was definitely plenty of news in camp and also things happening outside of minicamp that both Luke Gedeke and Jake Camarda signed their deals.
Right.
So in general, what does that tend to mean about when rookies sign their deals, where we stand in terms of the rookies getting signed? Yeah,
ever since the 2011 CBA kind of formalized all rookie contracts, you don't really see holdouts anymore. And I think a good 20 or so of the first-round picks around the league are already signed. Now, the Bucs didn't have a first-round pick, so they don't have that to worry about at all. Logan Hall was actually the first pick, second round, right? So generally, it starts from the bottom up, and you get your seventh rounders and so on, and you end up with a couple guys near the top of the draft that maybe take a few more weeks. But as of getting those last two guys signed, including punter Jake Camarda today, the Bucs still now only need to get Logan Hall, the second-round pick, and K-Dot in the tight end, the fourth-round pick. And I bet you that'll be done any day now.
Okay, and then speaking of Gedeke, he was a guy that we got a chance to hear Ryan Jensen talk about in his press conference. That's what's nice about minicamp. You got a lot of the guys coming to the podium, getting a lot of information from them. So what were some of the things that Ryan Jensen spoke about that stood out to you? Well,
he said he thinks he's a really talented player. You can already tell that. Now, you're always going to hear from players and coaches that at this time of the year with linemen, it's hard to really tell for sure. But he likes what he's seen. He thinks he's athletic. He thinks he moves around really well. And he thinks when he gets into training camp and the pads go on, and the way that Ryan put it was, once he puts 2 and 2 together, in other words, sort of gets the playbook down, that he's going to skyrocket was the word that he used. So Ryan Jensen already has a very good impression of him. And I think what we're going to see, which has been said multiple times, is that there really is going to be a competition for that left guard spot, and Gedeke has a shot. And honestly, that shouldn't be surprising to anybody, even if you like Aaron Stinnie quite a bit, because when you draft a guy in the first or second round, he usually gets in the starting line pretty quick. I mean, look at this. These are all the offensive linemen the Bucs have signed in the first or second round since 2001, so the last 20 years. Virtually all of them have started the full season as a rookie. I mean, a couple guys missed a few games due to injury and so on, but that's pretty much, that says a lot.
Yeah.
Second round offensive linemen and first round, obviously, offensive linemen.
They're expected to come in
and
do
do things. Now, maybe in this case, because you have the Aaron Stinnie option and maybe somebody else him or somebody else, beats him out at the beginning, maybe this will be an exception to the rule, but I don't think it'll be too terribly long into his career that Luke Goedeke's starting.
Okay, that's interesting. And then I know wide receiver is a position that in some ways is very secure in terms of at the top. Again, this is kind of a theme we've had the last few years talking about this, and then a lot of people fighting for some of those other positions. And minicamp is always an interesting way to see them when there's not pads. It's hard to tell about a lot of the linemen, but at least wide receivers, you do get a chance to see them running some routes and getting an idea. Is there anything that you feel like you were able to learn from some of that?
Well, you do get to see them if they're practicing. The Buccaneers in this case, you obviously have Mike Evans. We don't need to discuss that. We know what he's going to do. Pretty good
at the football thing.
But in this minicamp, Chris Godwin, still recovering from last year's injury, was not practicing. Scotty Miller, I think he's tweaked something. Again, Todd doesn't say a lot of specifics, but he tweaked something. He has some kind of minor injury that's keeping him out, and Russell Gage has a minor injury that's keeping him out. So there's been a lot of opportunities, a lot of routes for the other guys, and some of them are holdovers that played a little bit last year, and then there's some rookies and some undrafted guys that are doing well. But if you look at the competition, if you're not talking about Mike Evans and you're not talking about those three guys I just mentioned that are hurt, these are some of the guys that are in the mix, and this is what they did last year. And remember, for the majority of last year, Antonio Brown was your third receiver, and after he left the team, that was very late in the season, and there were all kinds of injury issues going on. So there was a big mix of who was in the mix, but coming into this year, you probably have guys that are battling for more obvious roles. So maybe the third guy, maybe the fourth guy, maybe the fifth guy. You can see on this list, Tyler Johnson actually got the most playing time and the most catches. But a couple of other guys there made some big plays. And towards the end of the year, Cyril Grayson made a couple of huge plays for the Buccaneers. And then, you had Scotty Miller, who had such a great 2020, especially in the postseason. And then last year, he really dealt with a turf toe injury that kind of knocked out about half the season for him. I mean, it really didn't have a role waiting for him when he got back.
Right.
So there's a lot of interesting, different kinds of people there, like Brashad Perryman, who's had some nice stretches with the Bucs too, right? And then not listed on there are the young guys. There's 5 other guys. Vincent Smith is a guy that's played a little bit for the Jets, but the 4 other guys, Jarrett Stearns, Cameron Brown, Kalen Geiger, and Vincent Smith, are all undrafted rookies. And of that group, the guy that Todd Bowles was talking, I almost say Bruce Arians every time I say. I think you can probably see me start to say a B word.
Right, yeah.
Bowles, Bruce,
that's all. Yeah, just stick with Bowles and you're good.
The one guy out of that group that they were talking about today was, I just lost the name, Devin Tompkins.
Okay.
And that's one of the undrafted free agents. We have a couple, and they're all kind of smaller guys, Devin Tompkins, Jarrett Stearns, and Kalen Geiger. But he's apparently looked smooth and fast and kind of interesting out there in the practice field this week. And so Coach said today he's very interested to see what that guy does when we get to camp and the pads go on and the competition really begins. So that's a name to keep in mind that you probably hadn't thought about before.
Right.
Devin Tompkins.
Okay, interesting. And then I know we haven't had a show since signing Akeem Hicks, actually.
Right.
And so even though it feels a little bit like old news now, we've had a whole mini camp, we haven't gotten a chance to talk about him here on the show, and now we've seen him out with the team and he's talked at the podium. So what do you think are some of the things that stand out about what he could bring to the team and what he has said about his experience here so far?
He signed on June 1st, I think, and that's really an answer. The signing of Akeem Hicks is really an answer to a lot of questions we've been fielding all spring. Do the Buccaneers need some more depth at a certain position, and is Ndamukong Suh coming back?
Right.
It would seem to answer both those questions. I mean, I guess you can never close the door for good, but signing Akeem Hicks would seem to indicate that he's taking that role. Right?
Yes.
So, and I did think, and we've said several times, that the Buccaneers needed something more on the defensive line, even after drafting Logan Hall, because Ndamukong Suh and Steve McClendon, who are not back, accounted for like 1,100 defensive snaps, and that's a lot. And do you want to really give Logan Hall 1,100 defensive snaps as a rookie? It's probably too much, right?
Yep.
So this way, you can probably give him a better sized role for a rookie. Now, but what else Akeem Hicks does is, as Ryan Jensen also said this week, we may have the biggest. He saw that signing and goes, do we have the biggest defensive line in the league?
Yeah.
I mean, look at these guys.
It's incredible.
First of all, in the middle, you got Vita Vea and Akeem Hicks, both just really big guys. Wide.
That was what I thought when I first met Akeem Hicks. And I mean, again, we're around the team a lot, so I'm used to being around guys like Vita Vea. Right. And Akeem, I saw and was like, this is a big dude. And then I felt even better about that at practice. I was standing next to Nacho, like watching them do a drill, and Nacho was like, that is a big dude. And I'm like, okay, when a defensive lineman.
Yeah, right. I mean, Nacho's on this list.
He's on this list. When that guy's going, man, that's a big dude. That means something.
Yeah, and then you got Will Golston and Logan Hall, who are really taller than you usually get on defensive line. It says 6'6", but they look noticeably taller than the other guys. Will Golston's been that kind of player all along, and Logan Hall is that kind of player, tall, long players. And Logan Hall was saying today that one of the things he learned from working a little bit with Warren Sapp this week is he really needs to use his length. His long arms, his wingspan, keep guys off him, move them around with his long arms and his strength. And so, I mean, the Buccaneers have size, they have length. It's a big group.
Right.
And we all know that's what Todd Bowles likes.
And you even factor in guys like Anthony Nelson. They're not the D-line guys, but they're playing up there. That's a very tall edge guy. That really. Just in general, the length, I mean, I feel like it reminds you of, watching teams get off a bus and, oh man, look how tall these guys are. Yeah, you pass the eye test.
Maybe also with all those tall guys with long arms, Todd Bowles was talking earlier this offseason about how he wants his offensive linemen to get more batted passes. When you see you're not going to make it and the quarterback is starting to wind up, get your arms up, back down more passes.
All right, well, we have a question from Jonathan who said, any more big name signings going to happen, you think?
I don't think so at this point. I mean, the big name was Akeem Hicks.
Well, I mean, I think people are probably still wondering about Gronk, which would count as a big name signing. If that
counts, then yeah.
If that counts. But yeah, I think otherwise in terms of outside people that wouldn't be re-signings if you think of it that way.
I would doubt it, but I will say what Todd Bowles said today to that question is he doesn't think so, because he was asked, do you think they have any more prominent additions before camp? I don't think so, but we're always looking to get better if somebody's available. If somebody becomes available that they like, or there's an injury and you have a need, then maybe so, but I think at the moment this roster is pretty much set for training camp.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Buccaneers Insider Live presented by Miller Lite. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.